Xiang began jumping in happiness. He was full of excitement with a smile hanging on his face. He would have laughed, but he wanted to remain somewhat low-key. Otherwise, if the Elder Courtyard's members came now to investigate, it would definitely be bad. Using his quickest speed, he picked the 20 azure profound fruits. These fruits were enough to last his uses for a very long time. Plus, if this tree continued to grow, it could still bear fruit. Perhaps this was the first ever azure profound tree. If I go to some place with dense death chi, would I be able to grow hell spirit grass? Xiang was lying on his bed and secretly got excited as he thought about it. At the same time, he was discussing the possibility with Su Meiyao. I have never tried. After all, hell spirit grass is difficult to locate and very rare. I never came across it naturally, but if there is an opportunity, you should definitely try. Su Meiyao replied. All the healing dawn refined using hell spirit grass were very formidable. Almost all of them were above the middle grade profound level. If people were to learn that Xiang had grown 20 azure profound fruits in just 20 days, they would definitely be mad with jealousy. This was one of the biggest, most confidential secrets Xiang had. Leaving the extreme Dan King courtyard, Xiang arrived at the 16th Martial Courtyard. He didn't see Yun Xiaodao or the others, and after asking around, he found out they had not yet been assigned any missions, so they had all went out to enjoy their own matters. I have to make a trip to Danxiang Taoyuan and pass the test for a level 3 alchemist. Xiang left a note behind before traveling to Danxiang Taoyuan to obtain proof that he was now a level 3 alchemist. A level 3 alchemist was required to understand how to refine 2 different types of middle-grade spirit level dawn at least. For refining, the number of failures allowed within the given time were extremely specific, making sure that the tested alchemists truly deserved this title. Xiang wanted this. After all, the title of a level 3 alchemist alone would make others fear him and dissuade many from seeking trouble with him. Danxiang Taoyuan was located in the Taoyuan province. Furthermore, it was quite far away from the extreme martial sect. If one were to take an ordinary horse carriage, it would take them at least a month to reach there. However, Xiang had the vermilion bird fire wings, so he estimated that it would take him around 10 days to reach Danxiang Taoyuan. Danxiang Taoyuan will probably have a Yaojing waiting for you, Su Meiyao said while making fun of him. Hua Yueyun. Xiang had certainly not ever forgotten about this seductive woman, who could seduce everyone with but a movement from her. Thinking about this woman, to his own surprise, he was inexplicably agitated. Hasn't that Yaojing said her true name was not Hua Yueyun? It may be hard to find her. Does that make you very disappointed? Su Meiyao teased with a soft laugh. If she is truly from Danxiang Taoyuan, I don't think it would be too difficult. Xiang touched his nose. After arriving at the outskirts of Tianmen City, he used his vermilion bird fire wings to fly above the clouds and towards the Taoyuan province. Fragrant City, this was the nearest city before Danxiang Taoyuan. Could also be considered one of the largest cities within the entire Taoyuan province. While walking down the city, Xiang smelled all sorts of different scents. Everywhere he went, he saw many beautiful flowers blooming on various trees and plants. This was truly a beautiful city. Xiang had already flown for 10 days. He crossed a dense, gigantic mountain range that had been filled with danger and finally arrived at this beautiful place. At the moment, he was sitting on a river shore and feeling the cool breeze on his skin while watching the trees blooming with purple flowers on the shore. His mind and soul became very relaxed. Located in the city was a Danxiang Tower, a property belonging to Danxiang Taoyuan. It was extremely large-scale, not only selling various spirit herbs but also many middle-grade and high-grade spirit-level dawn. However, they were all very expensive. After asking around the city, Xiang finally learned the location of Danxiang Tower. It turned out to be the 20-floor high giant tower. It occupied a very large area and was a 100-zhang wide square tower. Standing in the middle of Fragrant City, it was extremely visible and the center of the city. The tower looked ancient, as if it had been standing there for eons. Many vines had grown on top of it, blooming with various colorful flowers. From time to time, a flock of spiritual birds would hover on top of the vine's flowers near the top of the tower, and it seemed like a very warm and beautiful scene. Worthy of the name Fragrance City. It's so fragrant everywhere. No wonder Huayuan. That Yao Jing's entire body smelled so wonderful, Chen Xiang muttered. Although he had seen, albeit not very clearly, Huayuan's enchanting and seductive body, his heart could not help but be a little bit moved as he started fantasizing about that seductive Yao Jing. After entering the first floor of Danxiang Tower, Chen Xiang saw many transparent cabinets, and each of them were filled with small jade bottles or boxes. Above each was a label, indicating the name of the dawn. There were many people inside, mostly 9th or 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists. But Chen Xiang could sense that many of the people in the 10th level mortal marital realms had a similar uncommon type of true qi. He inferred from this that they were the hired guards of this tower. Chen Xiang learned from a beautiful shopgirl that among the 20 floors of Danxiang Tower, the first 5 floors at the bottom were specialized in selling dawn. The 6th to 9th floor were used to refine dawn, and the 10th floor was the location of the Alchemist's assessment. As for floors 11 to 20, they were either used to grow spirit herbs or the residential location of some of the staff from Danxiang Tower. If I want to sell spirit herbs, which floor should I go to? Chen Xiang asked in a low voice. He intended to dispose of various expensive spirit herbs, and he was sure the buyer would be an important figure of Danxiang Taoyuan. At that time, he could inquire details about Huayuan. Young master, what level of spirit herbs do you wish to sell? That beautiful shopgirl asked with a sweet smile. I want to sell the metal spirit fruit. Chen Xiang lowered his voice and whispered, making the beauty surprised. She saw Chen Xiang appeared to not be joking. Furthermore, she knew that no one dared to joke around with Danxiang Tower before whispering in reply, Young master, please follow me. Metal spirit fruit, even in Danxiang Taoyuan there were only a few. Now there was someone here who wished to sell them. Who in the world would be unwilling to buy it? This was the main reason why Chen Xiang soon arrived inside a VIP room. While drinking high-grade spiritual tea, Chen Xiang could not help but emotionally sigh. Ah, good tea. It is amazing and worthy of Danxiang Taoyuan to receive guests with such a great tea. The person who came to discuss the matter with Chen Xiang turned out to be a middle-aged woman. Although she looked ordinary, she had a noble temperament and her bearing revealed an almost regal atmosphere, giving off a very good impression. Chen Xiang quickly stood up and saluted her with a smile. After all, this person could be considered his elder. The middle-aged woman was wearing a plain light blue dress, but her regal aura made her more compelling. This was also the reason Chen Xiang was somewhat stiff. Furthermore, he was unable to tell the full strength of this middle-aged woman. There is no need to be so polite. I'm just a steward. Young master can forego the formalities and act as he wishes. That middle-aged woman softly said with a faint smile. She had a very amiable tone. Chen Xiang was sure that this middle-aged woman was someone in the true martial realm. This Danxiang Tower had actually sent such an important person as a guard. You can simply call me Mrs. Li. Can I take a look at the young master's metal spirit fruit? Mrs. Li asked with a slight smile. Hearing her name, Chen Xiang was slightly surprised, asking, Could it be you are the wife of Fragrance City's governor, Li Xiao? Exactly. It seems that young master has just come to Fragrance City. We, husband and wife, are true disciples of Danxiang Taoyuan. Mrs. Li replied. Chen Xiang took out the metal spirit fruit. Just now, he came to understand a little bit more about Fragrance City. The governor and his wife were both in the true martial realm, yet only the governor was famous. For how much does young master intend to sell this metal spirit fruit? Mrs. Li took only a glance before confirming this was indeed a metal spirit fruit. Moreover, it was grown under good conditions, and the spirit qi inside this metal spirit fruit was very verdant. Before coming here, Chen Xiang also learned about the general prices of spirit herbs. This metal spirit fruit was probably worth around 70,000 middle-grade crystal stones. Although it was technically a same-ranked herb as the azure profound fruit, it was 10 times cheaper than its counterpart. Not to mention if the azure profound fruit was put up for auction, it would sell for an even higher price. 80,000. Chen Xiang said one very fair price, and Mrs. Li nodded her head, then rotated a white jade bracelet on her hand. and with that a storage pouch appeared. "These are the 80,000 crystal stone. Young master can check it." Mrs. Li slightly smiled. Xianxia, swept with his divine sense, quickly understood clearly. There really were neatly cut 80,000 middle-grade crystal stones, and contained inside all of them was a rich spirit qi. Usually they were used for cultivation, and it was the most favored method of many low-level martial artists. While the majority of sects used them in arranging some large array or they were embedded in a spirit weapon, they had a very wide range of usage. "Mrs. I want to ask you something. Whether or not you know about the girl who was sent in the secular world to manage Danxiang Herbal Manor?" Xianxia asked. Mrs. Li shook her head. "I don't know. It was all arranged by the dean personally. Even when she came or returned, we are not clear. Besides, whoever was there only used Hua Yu in this name." Xianxia lightly sighed. "If I meet the dean, I'll inquire for the young master. Hope that young master can often come." Mrs. Li slightly smiled and said. Xianxia gratefully nodded his head. He now had 100,000 crystal stones. This was not a small sum, and he came to Danxiang Tower to buy some spirit herbs. Both the deans of Danxiang Taoyuan and Icewind Valley were very mysterious, and rarely participated in major things. So not many people had seen their faces. But Xianxia was certain both the deans of Danxiang Taoyuan and Icewind Valley were females. From seeing that both the stewards of Danxiang Herbal Manor and Danxiang Tower were females, Xianxia dared to be sure of this point. The Danxiang Taoyuan's dean and Elder Dan, whether or not they have any relation to each other, Xianxia vehemently suspected. Xianxia now bought a large number of herbs for refining low-grade and middle-grade spirit-level Dan. Now he first wished to learn how to refine two kinds of low-grade spirit-level Dan. One was called Gathering Spirit Powder, and this was the favorite for people with poor spirit veins. After taking it, it could temporarily improve the quality of their spirit vein, and could make the martial artist absorb spirit qi as fast as the martial artists with good spirit veins. It was relatively easy to sell low-grade spirit-level Dan. Another one was called the Martial Element Dan, which contained a kind of violent true qi. After swallowing it, it would make the martial artist enter into a violent state, increasing the power released from their true qi. But it also carried side effects with it, and if it was taken continuously, it would be hazardous to the human body. But it was one of the favorite Dan taken by martial artists at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm because while fighting demon beasts, as long as they could increase their strength even by a little bit, they would be able to win. The carefully taken, it had no major side effects. Then there were also the Exploding Qi Dan and Melting Poison Dan, middle-grade spirit-level Dan, and that was what he planned to refine after successfully learning how to refine the low-grade spirit-level Dan. It was said that both the Martial Element Dan and the Gathering Spirit Powder were relatively easier to refine than True Qi Dan. Besides, they were also not too expensive. One of them could also lay a good foundation. A Martial Elemental Dan could be bought for 300 crystal stones, while the Gathering Spirit Powder could be bought for 400, and each set of herbs for each Dan was also similarly priced. Because after refining each set of herbs, they would be able to yield at least 4 Dan. After successfully refining, could one cheaply earn crystal stones. Xianxia bought 20 sets of materials for each Dan, then left the Danxiang Tower, because he found that he was being targeted. When he came out from the detention, he came to know a bounty was set by Beast Martial Sect on him. In the entire Qinwu provinces, he had a bounty of 100,000 crystal stones. These 100,000 crystal stones were counted as nothing in the eyes of Xianxia, but for many people it was a very large number, because it would allow the martial artists to buy a lot of true elemental Dan or true qi Dan, from which they would be able to elevate their strength by a lot. After leaving the Danxiang Tower, Xianxia walked towards the outskirts of Fragrant City. He wanted to lead those targeting him to the outside of the city, and if they had any evil intentions, then Xianxia would also conveniently act. As long as he didn't encounter any true martial realm level martial artists, Xianxia had nothing to fear, even if there were many of them. Just as the city gates were in his sight, a dragon roar suddenly came from a distance. This sudden oncoming sound was deafening, and everyone inside the fragrant city could heard it clearly. This dragon roar made everyone's eardrums slightly sore from shock, and it was very shocking. Xianxia raised his head, looked, and saw in the sky far away from the city gates. There was now a red overcast which was gradually transforming into a dragon, but it only appeared for a short time, and then suddenly disappeared. This vision could be described as earth-shattering, and this sharp dragon roar even made the land slightly tremble, making the fishes in the river writhe, and all the birds resting on the trees in Fragrant City densely flew in the upper air. Everything and everyone was very frightened. Xianxia immediately told this situation to Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu. They had also heard the dragon roar previously, and when they came to know about a dragon overcast emerging just after the roar far away in the sky, they could not help but exclaim, "Dragon birth!" Su Meiyao, with excitement as well as with some fear, said, "Dragons appearing in the mortal world was very detrimental for the mortal world. If this dragon became a full adult, it would absolutely be a huge disaster for the mortal world. How could a dragon be born?" Xianxia walked out of the city, and even he found it difficult to believe. Not clear, but our teacher had once told us that when the dragon had broken the shell of the dragon egg, a dragon overcast would appear in the sky, and it would be accompanied by a dragon roar. A dragonling is born in this way. Bai Yuyu's complexion became gloomy, like she was worried about something. If a dragon is reined in by a wicked person, then it would be troublesome. Su Meiyao's brow wrinkled, and her enchanting face became somewhat pale. "Xianxia, you should also hurry. You might be able to find the dragon, and as you have learnt the dragon martial technique, it should be much easier for you to rein in the dragon." Rein in a dragon? Are you kidding? That was what Xianxia thought, and Xianxia didn't believe he could do it. Besides, a large number of people were now running towards that direction. "What are you standing there for? Quickly, let's go!" Bai Yuyu's cold voice loudly resounded in his ear. Xianxia also broke into a gallop, mixed in the crowd inside. He had intended to use Vermilion Bird Fire Wing, but he feared he might be found out by the true martial realm martial artists of the Beast Martial Sect, and at that time they would attack him, and that was not worth it. While he was running, Xianxia felt a few true martial realm martial artists' chi fluctuations. As the more time passed, he sensed more and more true martial realm martial artists. Their speed was very fast, and some were even standing on their own spirit weapons and flying at a low altitude. After pouring their true chi into their spirit weapons, one could, by using their divine sense, control their true chi undulations, which would allow the spirit weapon to fly. But with this, they could only fly at a low altitude. Once they flew too high due to some other conditions, they would fall down. Besides, this could only be achieved by using level 7 spirit weapons. In just a short span of time, Xianxia discovered more than 30 true martial realm martial artists. As this place was rich in dawn, it could attract many strong martial artists. A large group of people flew towards the location where the red dragon cloud appeared, and most people thought a strange treasure must have appeared in that place. Otherwise, it absolutely would not cite such a vision. Only Xianxia knew that this vision was due a dragonling being born. An hour passed, and everyone came to a very large valley. Currently, there was a big light red cloud over this valley, which was left over from the previous cemented dragon. Everyone was searching in this huge valley, but they had not found any other thing. Just a zhang-wide pit in the center of the valley, and it appeared as if something burst out from below. "Xianxia!" One man suddenly shouted, and everyone was immediately surprised. And as long as someone took part in a day-to-day life, all of them would have heard Xianxia's name. Xianxia was but worth 100,000 crystal stones. Xianxia did not immediately respond, but there was a middle-aged man wearing black robe, with a sheet in his hand, who gradually walked towards him. "You are Xianxia, correct?" That middle-aged man held up a sheet towards Xianxia. On it was a very realistic painting of Xianxia's appearance. Although Xianxia was now wearing a very common outfit, his eyes, face, nose, and mouth were all very similar. Earlier, Xianxia had heard that the Beast Martial Sect mass distributed portraits of him everywhere, which made him furious. He had just killed a Beast Martial Sect's disciple to save his own life, but now the Beast Martial Sect was posting a high bounty on his head. Now he swore in his heart that one day in the future, he would definitely clear this debt with the Beast Martial Sect. "So you want to kill me to collect the 100,000 crystal stones reward?" Xianxia clenched his fist and asked in a heavy tone. Xianxia guessed that this middle-aged man in front of him was responsible for sending all those people who were eyeing him previously. By now there were a few thousand martial artists gathered in this valley, and they were mostly all in the mortal martial realm. Although they had not found any treasure, they encountered Xianxia, and the 100,000 crystal stones reward was a temptation that was very hard to resist for many of them here. However, none of them had acted and all took a wait-and-see attitude. Besides, they all knew that Xianxia was not easy to deal with. According to the beast martial sect, as long as someone can get your head, they would be able to receive 100,000 crystal stones. However, if you don't resist, I might just leave your corpse intact for the reward. That middle-aged man coldly smiled before retracting the portrait in his hand. The middle-aged man wore a black robe, and a strange true qi was exuding from his whole body, and it differed very much from the people around him. Moreover, Xianxia felt that this true qi breath was somewhat similar. "Are you a disciple of the 100 Poison sect?" Xianxia coldly asked. The 100 Poison sect was one of the 5 great devil sects. It was also the most feared devil path sect by the martial artists of the Qinwu 9 provinces. Because the 100 Poison sect specialized in the usage of poisons, they could kill anyone invisibly, and after they were dead, they themselves wouldn't know how they died. Really, 100 Poison sect. Hearing these 3 words, the complexion of everyone around suddenly changed. They one after another went far away from Xianxia, leaving out even more space and overseeing everything from far. There were even some people who were afraid of death and went far away from the valley even more quickly. That middle-aged man in his heart could not help but be surprised, sneered and said, "Worthy of an exceptional figure of the new generation. You truly have a good eyesight." Xianxia noticed, few true martial realm martial artists were also overlooking from far away. If it was before, after knowing one was from the 100 Poison sect, he would have been directly hunted down by the righteous sects, but now the true martial realm martial artists had no intention to come out and fight. From this it was perfectly clear they were all interested in watching, and even had the intention to wait for Xianxia to be killed. At this time they also wanted to receive the 100,000 crystal stones by taking out Xianxia. 100,000 crystal stones, even for true martial realm martial artists, was not a small amount. 100,000 crystal stones reward. It is definitely mine to grab. That middle-aged man grinned, fiercely waving his palm, only to see countless needles flying towards Xianxia. One after another colorless and odorless poisonous qi permeated from these needles. Xianxia, after knowing the other party was a 100 Poison sect disciple, he was immediately on alert, because the 100 Poison sect also specialized in usage of hidden weapons. If he could not find where the attack from his hidden weapons came from, then he would certainly be dead. A slight black qi suddenly covered the whole of Xianxia's body, and this black qi in the blink of an eye transformed into a clear water covering, wrapping around Xianxia. Those piercing poisonous needles plunged into that water qi cover, and suddenly the qi aura on the needles dissipated in the water. This was a kind of hard and soft defensive martial skill that Xianxia had just learned. It was called the Black Tortoise Luotian cover, and don't see this layer of mild water qi cover as nothing. This cover could withstand very strong powers. Even if 10 mortal realm martial artists of the 10th level attacked it at the same time, they would barely be able to destroy this qi cover. No need to mention the person inside of it. After the needle containing the poison pierced the water qi cover, they were resolved without a trace, and not even a shadow of any of them were seen. This made the middle-aged man dumbstruck. He himself was at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm, and previously he had fired those poisonous needles with 100% of his power. He had already killed hundreds of 9th and 10th level mortal martial realm martial artists using this move, but Xianxia had dispelled it so easily. Although the Black Tortoise Divine Exercise lacked in powerful offense skills, but its defense was abnormally powerful. Moreover, very little true qi was consumed. Xianxia had only learnt the skill after entering the 10th level of the mortal martial realm. He continued using the Black Tortoise Tian Luo cover to protect his body, and then leapt towards that middle-aged man. The 100 Poison sect's martial arts were not strong, however, their poison and hidden weapon were. Xianxia's attack was very fast, and not to mention that middle-aged man, Even the people watching in the distance didn't have the time to react. Xianxia came in front of that middle-aged man. Xianxia shot a palm, and the ground fiercely shook, suddenly cracking open. As soon as he acted, Xianxia had used the powerful low-grade earth-level martial skill. Shocking Heaven Palm. His palm carried a powerful shock, and true chi encompassed that middle-aged man's body, and in the blink of an eye emitting a burst of blood mist due to shock. That middle-aged man could clearly feel that inside of his own body his bones and meridians, inch by inch, were shattering like firecrackers. Only those who had been struck by Xianxia's attack could clearly feel Xianxia's overbearing might. Otherwise, who would have believed that this was the power released at the 10th level of the mortal martial realm? Xianxia coldly smiled while he looked at the painful face of the middle-aged man lying on the ground. Just as he thought of beheading him, he saw that middle-aged pull out a pitch-black crossbow. He could clearly see pitch-black crossbow shooting a black arrow, directly stabbing towards his heart. So fast. Xianxia subconsciously reinforced Black Tortoise Tian Luo cover S defensive force, and when that arrow shot from the pitch-black crossbow arrived, only a bang sound was heard. The chi cover wrapping around Xianxia's body suddenly burst open, and a finger-long short crossbow arrow was suspended in front of Xianxia's chest. So close, it almost penetrated my heart. Xianxia's silhouette flashed, leapt into the air, and fired a palm towards the middle-aged man on the ground. A giant palm cemented from azure true chi appeared, and fiercely pressed on that middle-aged man. The pressure broke everything, and blood and flesh splattered. Xianxia took a deep breath, and thinking about that previous quick and sudden crossbow arrow, his heart had a lingering fear. From observing that shot crossbow arrow, he found out it was congealed out of true chi, and was very overbearing. Otherwise, it would not have been able to shatter his powerful Black Tortoise Tian Luo cover. Xianxia pulled out that black crossbow from the mutilated remains, and used clean water to wash it. Then he poured his own true chi in it, and saw that the crossbow suddenly congealed a short black arrow. Isn't this the third ranked among the level 7 spirit weapons, demanding life devil bow? From far away a sound came, and this made the onlookers near the center burst into hubbub. A level 7 spirit weapon was very rare, and mostly true martial realm martial artists were in possession of them. Moreover, the top 10 were even more formidable. Xianxia in his heart was delighted, as this demanding life devil bow was very easy to use. This was absolutely the best spirit weapon for sinister martial artists, and just as he was about to put it away, a gust of fearsome chi waves pressured down on him from the sky. This true chi was very heavy, as if a big mountain fiercely befell on him, ruthlessly pounding on Xianxia's body. In that moment, Xianxia only felt his own internal organs inside his own body being squeezed together. Then his whole body cracked, making him spew a mouthful of blood, and then he fell on the ground. Someone attacked him, but it was also someone at the true martial realm. Xianxia immediately thought, this attacker must have been someone who wanted to obtain this demanding life devil bow. One handsome young man wearing a beautiful blue robe slowly descended from the sky, stood in front of Xianxia and bent over, extending his hand towards that demanding life devil bow. After he saw the devil bow slowly rise, and sucked towards that young man's hand, Xianxia looked up and glared at the young man with fire gushing out from his eyes. He wanted to deeply ingrain this young man's appearance into his own mind. As long as he does not die, he would definitely make this young man pay tenfold, no 100-fold. Seeing the monstrous anger within Xianxia's eyes, the young man only slightly smiled in response. Xianxia, humph, now mortal martial realm martial artists are actually worth 100,000 crystal stones. To think mortal martial realm martial artists are now so valuable that one brat could actually be worth so much. I took this demanding life bow, but don't think I'm robbing you. I'm only taking it because it is a devil weapons, and in your hands it would be harmful for the entire martial arts community. On what basis? If you want to confiscate it, you would have to wait for your turn. At the very least, our extreme martial sect dean needs to speak first, Xianxia said while grinding his teeth. Based on the fact that right now, I alone can stomp all over you, That young man contemptuously smiled and stepped down on Xianxia's head, burying his face in dirt. Xianxia felt like his heart was bleeding. He and that young man had never met before this, but because the other party was currently stronger, he was stepped on, trampling all over his dignity. Mortal martial realm martial artists, in the face of those in the true martial realm, were nothing more than ants. This time around, Xianxia was seriously injured, yet both his hands stubbornly grabbed a handful of soil while he struggled to lift his head. Glaring up at that young man, he asked through grinded teeth, his voice full of resentment, "What is your name?" "True martial sect, Liao Xiaoyun. Why, do you want to take revenge?" "I'm afraid you will not have that opportunity. I'll take you to Beast Martial Sect and receive the reward." Liao Xiaoyun sneered before once again vigorously stepping down on Xianxia's head. At this moment an endless hatred was born in Xianxia's heart. To once safeguard and maintain his dignity, although he was nothing more than an ant in the eye of experts, he did not hesitate at all to oppose and defy Elder Dan. Although he was successful that time, it was on the premise that Elder Dan did not act with a heavy hand. If you don't have the strength, how could you talk about dignity? If you had enough strength, you could obtain everything and your dignity would never be able to be trampled on by others. Never would you have to worry about losing your life. I want to become stronger. This was Xianxia's only thought. Afterwards he could have his revenge. Xianxia's strength came out of nowhere as he once again lifted his head. By this point, the soil in his hands had already been reduced to powder as blue veins bulged out on both of his fists. He had a grim look on his face, and each and every word of his was like a knife. "Liao Xiaoyun, I, Xianxia, had no injustice or hatred with you. However, you still act and treat me like this. I swear if I, Xianxia, do not die, then you will. I'll make you pay 100, no, 1,000 times over. I will not only utterly destroy you, but also decimate the true martial sect behind you into mere rubble." His voice contained bottomless hatred accompanied by a monstrous slaughter chi that was being released from his entire body, and people could not help but shudder from it. "Humph! You do not have this opportunity." However, just as Liao Xiaoyun finished speaking, his complexion fiercely changed. A big pool of water had suddenly appeared underneath Xianxia's body as he escaped into the water. Everyone sucked in a mouthful of cold air. To their surprise, Xianxia had actually escaped. From the ruthless words Xianxia had just spoke, nobody had a single doubt in their minds that with time, Xianxia would definitely become a huge problem for the true martial sect. Xianxia had casted water escape and gotten away. Liao Xiaoyun had blasted a few palm blows and cleaved open the earth, creating giant deep pits. Yet not even a hint of Xianxia could be found. Beast martial sect, true martial sect. Just wait and see what happens. Xianxia clenched his fists and viciously said while floating down a river's side. "Oh, well, make a good recovery." Su Meiyao didn't know what to say. "Quickly enter the true martial realm. At that time I can pass down my supreme devil skills. You could make those sanctimonious guys suffer in agony, making their fates worse than death. Make them regret ever being born into this world." Bai Yuyu's voice was also filled with slaughter chi, extremely cold and piercing. It was perfectly clear that she was furious on Xianxia's behalf, making him feel very warm in his heart. "Once again, I'm letting you down." Xianxia climbed ashore and took a white jade dan out from a box and swallowed. His injuries were very serious and needed quite some time before he could recover. "It's nothing, you came out for experience. Who hasn't encountered these sort of things? As long as you're not dead, everything's fine. Relying on your wealth. Only time is required for I and junior sister to make you into a peerless martial artist." Bai Yuyu replied. Her voice was rather high-pitched. She was encouraging Xianxia. Xianxia operated the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise and nursed his injuries before once again swallowing a white jade dan, which made him much better. "That Liao Xiaoyun is very powerful. His strength is close to the Nirvana realm. He should be in the mid-stage of the tempering realm," Su Meiyao said. The true martial realm altogether had 9 levels. After the true martial realm, one could enter the three extreme great realms. These three extreme great realms were the spirit martial realm. In this realm, divine sense was taken to the extreme. Then there was the soul martial realm. After the extreme peak of divine sense was achieved, a martial spirit was bred and then taken to its extreme peak. In the end, there was the tempering realm, where the body was tempered to its extreme limits, which was often the hardest step. This was because cultivation of the body was very hard. Once the pinnacle of the tempering realm was achieved, it led to the great nirvana tribulation. Only if one passes this tribulation could they enter the nirvana realm. The nirvana realm was the peak of martial might within the mortal world. Xianxia still held a lingering fear. Previously, in front of that Liao Xiaoyun, Xianxia truly didn't even have the strength to fight back. If only he was in the true martial realm, he would not have been beaten so badly. After a good refinement of your immortal devil body, going through the tempering realm is simply a piece of cake, said Bai Yuyu. When Xianxia had left the extreme martial sect, he only brought 2 white jade dawn with him. But this was a high-grade spirit-level healing medicine. For those in the mortal martial realm, it had a very significant effect. Xianxia had just recuperated for a day's time and already recovered about half of his strength. He was currently in a cave not too far from the river shore. He had created this cave using the profound aura finger. It was like digging a sediment and was a very quick process. At this time, Xianxia was still recuperating from his injuries and still had quite some time left before complete recovery. He hid in this cave and took out the inferior alchemical furnace that had been given to him by his father before he started to learn about other low-grade spirit-level dawn. While Xianxia was in Danxiang Tower, he bought a ton of spirit-level dan ingredients, and there were at least 10 sets for each different dan. The most expensive of the herbs had been the ones for the white jade dan, with each set costing 2,000 crystal stones. He had bought exactly 10 sets of them. Meanwhile, a set of herbs for the true elemental dan cost 1,500 crystal stones, and he had bought 10 sets of them as well. Both of these dawn were relatively higher in demand among the high-grade spirit-level dawn. Then there was the martial elemental dan and gathering spirit powder, both categorized as low-grade spirit-level dawn, as well as the melting poison dan and the exploding chi dan, both at the middle-grade spirit level. For all of them, he had bought 20 sets for each. He had a solid foundation and rich experience in refining true Qi Dawn, and he believed that it wouldn't be too difficult for him to refine other spirit-level Dawn. At most, he would just fail a couple of times. Gathering spirit powder was a crystalline powder that could be taken with water. This was the first time Xianxia had refined herbal powder, but compared to Dawn it was much easier to refine because he wouldn't have to solidify them. Only after failing 8 times was Xianxia able to successfully refine it, using a total of 4 days. However, they were all refined out using that poor quality alchemical furnace. Next was the martial element dan. It inherently contained violent elements, which was why refining it was very difficult. Actually, it was harder than refining true Qi Dawn. Xianxia spent a total time of 10 days, along with 15 failures before he was able to successfully refine one out. After switching to the brilliant flame dragon furnace, Xianxia once again failed 3 times, but did not fail in the 2 that followed. Low-grade spirit-level Dawn were more difficult compared to the 3 common grades of Dawn, all of which Xianxia had mastered before. However, after getting experienced in refining low-grade spirit-level Dawn, the others were now much easier for him to master. For example, a low-grade spirit-level Dan called Confusing Spirit Powder Xianxia had been successful in refining with just 1 try. When this drug was sprinkled, it could confuse other people's minds. Within the period of confusion, it would make others feel confused and drowsy, and it was a wonder drug used by shady martial artists or to deal with the demon beasts. Xianxia was only 19 years old, yet he was already able to refine 4 different kinds of low-grade spirit-level Dawn. If he were to go back to Danxiang Tower and get his Alchemist rank certificate, it would certainly scare many people. Half a month passed, and he was only a little bit better. After all, his vital organs and meridians had received very serious injuries, and only now had he stabilized them. His condition would not continue to deteriorate, but only with time could he recover bit by bit. Originally Xianxia's target was to refine middle-grade spirit-level Dawn, only then would he go for the Alchemist assessment, but now he had made up his mind to only go when he could refine 2 kinds of high-grade spirit level dawn so he could become a level 4 alchemist. It should be noted that his apprentice, Yao Haisheng, was only a level 3 alchemist. Although there was only a single-digit difference between a level 3 and level 4 alchemist, but it was like the difference between heaven and earth. Level 4 alchemists were able to refine 2 different kinds of high-grade spirit level dawn, which was in itself extremely terrifying. This was because most people were not like Xianxia, who after refining only 10 or 20 times was able to grasp the most crucial point in refinement. Xianxia had heard that some alchemists, while learning to refine the true elemental Dan, had failed hundreds of times. Plus, this was one of the better case scenarios. There were many alchemists who had a very unfortunate life who could never refine the true elemental Dan. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed as Xianxia was recuperating. He was already successful in refining the 2 middle-grade spirit level dawn, the exploding Qi Dan and the melting poison Dan. Exploding Qi Dan contained a large amount of violent true Qi. After swallowing it, this true Qi would immediately be released. This released true Qi was very violent, but it would not hurt the dosed martial artists. This type of Dan would allow martial artists to temporarily enhance their strength. It was a very popular Dan. Even if their entire true Qi had been depleted, after swallowing an exploding Qi Dan, the martial artist could still release one last powerful blow. During a fight, even if it was just a single extra move, the result could end up completely different and overturn the entire fight. The melting poison Dan was a detoxifying Dan which could produce a special potent and true Qi. It would quickly dissipate the poison within the body, turning it into urine or releasing it through sweat. When martial artists went out to hunt demon beasts, taking 1 or 2 melting poison dawn with them would allow them to be much more relaxed. After refining the 2 middle-grade spirit level Dans, he accumulated even more alchemy experience which laid a good solid foundation for refining high-grade spirit level dawn. Xianxia had already disappeared for 2 months after his escape, and had not returned to the extreme martial sect. Gu Dongqin and Wu Keiming had secretly sent people to search for their young martial uncle. Although it was very difficult for them to accept a goofball as their young martial uncle, he was still technically their martial uncle and they still had to respect his seniority. This brat shouldn't have died, right? If later on, teacher or that insane old man came to learn about this, then they would raise hell, Wu Keiming said with an anxious look. According to the information we have received, he definitely escaped, yet not even his shadow has been seen in these last 2 months. It is highly likely that he is still recuperating. Liao Xiaoyun, this little rascal, actually dared to do such a thing. Remember that 100 years ago he once contradicted me. If you had not stopped me, I would have slapped off his rotten mouth. Gu Dongqin had a furious expression on his face. Looking at his expression, it was perfectly obvious that he could not wait to head towards the true martial sect and immediately beat Liao Xiaoyun to death. Wu Keiming said, "Dean, this Liao Xiaoyun is a treasure of the true martial sect. In just 3 years he has achieved the tempering realm. It will not be long before he begins his path down nirvana. At that time, he would be the first to ever enter the nirvana realm this quickly. Fastest my ass, if he cannot cope with the nirvana great tribulation, then any genius is nothing more than shit." Gu Dongqin looked out of the window, his eyes twinkling. "I need to take a trip to the beast martial sect and force them to remove the bounty on Xianxia. Otherwise this brat is going to face even more hardships in the future." The beast martial sect is relying on their 3 newly advanced nirvana realm martial artists to gain a mile after getting an inch from us, the extreme martial sect. They were actually in the wrong in that matter. Yet they still dared post a reward on Xianxia, Wu Keiming furiously shouted. They know the nirvana great tribulation for all 3 of us is not far away. They want to take advantage of the fact we are concentrating on the nirvana great tribulations and seize the position of the strongest sect in the Qinwu mainland. Meanwhile, the true martial sect just seems ready to make trouble. Gu Dongqin looked extremely serious. The nirvana realm had a total of 9 great tribulations. When the martial artist's strength was elevated to a certain extent, a great tribulation would descend. After crossing each great tribulation, One would become even more powerful, but similarly the next Great Tribulation would also become even more frightening. Historically, many geniuses had fallen while attempting to cross the 9 Nirvana tribulations. Gu Dongqin and Wu Keiming, these vigorous old men, had survived these great tribulations again and again. Also, I have no idea where third sister has gone. She said she was going into closed-door training, but not once have I seen her inside the mysterious realm. All day she is so secretive. Our extreme martial sect has been relying on her high-quality refined Dan for support. Gu Dongqin helplessly sighed. There were truly not many excellent alchemists out there. Yeah, she originally had a great chance to become a Dan King, but who could expect her to be seriously injured while crossing the Great Tribulation, leading her purple moon fire spirit being weakened? It is truly regretful. Wu Keiming sighed. Xianxia had always though Elder Dan was a Dan King, but who would have thought she was the same as Su Meiyao, a Dan ancestor? Nevertheless, this level was already extremely hard to achieve. While hiding in the cave, Xianxia was oblivious to the fact that millions of people were searching for him. The majority of these people were trying to find him for the reward, because they had learned Xianxia escaped with serious injuries. As long as they could grab Xianxia, they could get 200,000 crystal stones as a reward. The Beast Martial Sect had once again increased the reward, and this was right after Gu Dongqin took a trip to visit the Beast Martial Sect. Their intentions were very obvious. They were being intentionally provocative towards the extreme martial sect and intentionally didn't give face to Gu Dongqin. The Beast Martial Sect and the Extreme Martial Sect both equally hated each other to an extreme because Huang Jitian had once killed the Beast Martial Sect's dean. In light of this point, the hatred between them could not be resolved in any way. Seemingly in response, Gu Dongqin also issued a ruthless statement. If anyone stronger than Xianxia was going to try to kill him to seek the reward, no matter who they were, that person would become the #1 enemy of the Extreme Martial Sect. At that time, all the elders of the Extreme Martial Sect would be dispatched. If they got hold of them, he or she would be tortured to death. All the elders of the Extreme Martial Sect were very powerful, and no one doubted Gu Dongqin's words were merely an empty threat. If he said it, they would definitely follow through with it. Others thought Gu Dongqin did this in order to secretly clash with the Beast Martial Sect. But how could they have known that he did it to make it somewhat safer for his young martial uncle? In these past 2 months, Xianxia had not only learned more about alchemy, but also refined a massive amount of true Qi Dan, a total of more than 1,000, all of which he intended to sell. As for the true Qi Dan he had obtained previously, he had already eaten all of them. What he needed right now was a substantial amount of crystal stones to buy the herbs required for the refinement of high-grade spirit level Dan. This was because when he was refining high-grade spirit level Dan, he had failed in all of his attempts. Now you should start refining building foundations Dan. Their difficulty is around the same as high-grade spirit level Dan. Since you don't have any more herbs for high-grade spirit level Dan, you should learn how to refine the building foundation Dan. If you're successful, you should soon be able to enter the true martial realm, Su Meiyao said. Xianxia was elated in his heart, but at the same time it was almost unbearable. The materials for the building foundation Dan were very expensive, and every time he failed his heart would feel like bleeding. What are you so scared of? Obtaining 1,000-year beast Dan isn't necessary for you. To replace it, you could simply hunt down demon beasts and get their monster Dan. As for the herbs, you have the dragon saliva exercise. What are you so afraid of? Su Meiyao continued speaking. Xianxia's heart was pounding as he was debating whether or not he should attempt to refine the 1,000-vein fruit, metal spirit fruit, and azure profound fruit. He had more than 20 of each, which was more than enough for him to try 20 times. The life element inside the 1,000-year beast Dan was only enough for him to try 5 times. As for the other auxiliary spirit herbs, he was definitely not lacking in them. As for the purple spirit fruit, 1,000-year-old ginseng, blood spirit grass, radix, earth spirit grass, and others, they were all herbs he obtained from the herb garden, and he still had plenty. Xianxia also knew that in order to protect himself, he needed to enter the true martial realm. Otherwise he would become targeted by those who had reached the true martial realm, and he would once again be embarrassed and forced to escape, or he might even be killed. Su Meiyao thought for a moment and once again began speaking. Use the brilliant flame dragon furnace while refining because refining it will require a lot of time. As much as 1 or 2 months, at the very least it would still take 8 to 10 days. Also, in order to bake those herbs into herbal powder you need to use extremely high temperatures, and when you fuse the herbal spirit qi it would require even more time and spirit. Xianxia nodded his head in response and took out the herbs required for refining a building foundation dan. He was currently hiding in the mountainside, and in order to ensure more safety, he dug a passage from under the river leading to the mountainside, making it ever more difficult for people to find him. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu both came out. The cave was illuminated by luminous stones and the environment could not be considered bad as there was also a nearby lake. Take each herb and divide each of them into 4 equal parts, Su Meiyao ordered while glancing at the spirit herbs that were exuding all kinds of peculiar spirit qis. What? Divided into 4? Xianxia couldn't understand and asked. Exactly. Divide a metal spirit fruit into 4 equal parts and do the same for a azure profound fruit. Now do you understand? Divide a single set of building foundation dan marshals into 4 parts and refine them individually. All of your herbs have sufficient spirit qi. This will not damage them at all. Additionally, if you fail now, it will be less disheartening. Su Meiyao teased while smiling slightly. At the same time she grabbed a knife and started cutting a metal spirit fruit. Xianxia now understood. He had also once thought of doing this, but previously the herbs were not of a superior enough quality to do so, and after cutting them much of their spirit qi would be dispersed. In order to prevent the dispersal of spirit qi from the herbs, Su Meiyao made Xianxia dilute the dragon saliva using water, and then soaked the cut-off spirit herbs in it. That way, not only would the spirit qi of the herbs not be dispersed, but on the contrary it would increase by a lot. Sister Meiyao, I had not expected that not only were you so beautiful, but also equally clever. Who said big chest means no brains, all nonsense. Xianxia said while smiling. It definitely wouldn't hurt to flatter Su Meiyao. If my junior sister wasn't clever, she would never have become so strong. Even more, she would definitely not have become a powerful alchemist. Bai Yuyu said. Su Meiyao tenderly spat. Good, brat. Have you or have you not previously considered me and Sister Yuyu as only big chests and no brains? Xianxia saw that Bai Yuyu looked colder than usual. He could not help but take glances again and again at the proud chest of Bai Yuyu, but he still hastily said, Sister Meiyao, why do you want to drag in Sister Yuyu? Previously I was just kidding, just joking around. He had already seen everything from these 2 beauties. Xianxia would never forget this, and it was the same for Bai Yuyu and Su Meiyao. After all, they were women, and this kind of thing would be taken even more seriously inside their hearts. In fact, they would often think about it. However, they also knew that Xianxia at that time had no choice in the matter, besides it also gifted them a great hope. Right now, both beauties once again thought about the time Xianxia saw their perfect jade bodies, and their face could not help but turn red. However, Xianxia was concentrating on cutting the herbs and was completely oblivious of this fact, or else he would have definitely been stunned at their facial expressions. Xianxia was first cutting the main herbs, before sorting out the other auxiliary herbs and uniformly cutting them. This was all done very carefully, otherwise it would affect the alchemy. However, it is very important to know that Xianxia had now been refining dawn for quite a long time, so he was clear on how much each section should be. This sort of subtle feeling was a must-have for alchemists. Sister Yuyu, Sister Meiyao, who do you 2 like? When your strength was at its pinnacle, hadn't there been a lot of people who chased you? Xianxia curiously asked. Like hell, these 2 divine girls were ordinary existences. He had read long and heard as well as scoured a lot of historical texts, but still hasn't found out anything about them. He suspected that they were from other mortal martial worlds. Like Elder Dan, although I have encountered many powerful men, I have never liked any of them. In my entire lifetime I would never have this sort of feeling. This is mainly because the primary exercise I cultivate is called the Ruthless Devil skill. Bai Yuyu coldly said. While some people did chase me, they were unable to defeat me, so I refused them on those grounds. Bai Yuyu truthfully replied. This actually made Xianxia somewhat surprised but also doubtful. He glanced at Su Meiyao and saw that her eyes were full of concern, as if she was worried about Bai Yuyu. "Sister Meiyao, what about you?" Xianxia asked. As they had spent more time with each other, they had all become a bit more familiar. Sometimes he would also ask about some relatively large issues. "I'd like to find a good man, but that is too hard. My teacher was powerful enough, but he was still not able to give us maximum protection. Otherwise we would not be in this situation." Su Meiyao replied in a low voice. Afterwards she gently laughed. "Don't look at me like that. Not a single person has actually chased me, because I was an alchemist. Other people could not afford to have such high aspirations, not to mention the fact that my reputation was even more ferocious than senior sisters. Such an enchanting and moving Yaojing actually had a ferocious reputation." Xianxia found it somewhat hard to believe. Xianxia was sure that these two women had hid many things from him, and perhaps even lied to him about some things. He had begun to suspect that these two were not from the mortal martial world, but had already gone to the heavenly realms, otherwise their enemy would not be so strong. But how would people from the heavenly realms appear in the mortal world? After all, only at the time of the intersections of the three worlds would they be able to descend to the mortal world. Could it be that both of them arrived at this mortal martial world 100,000 years ago during the time of the last great battles between the three realms? Xianxia, while thinking in his heart, was secretly shocked, but he immediately rejected this notion. This was because even during the three realms fusion, the heavenly realms and the mortal world remained separated. Do not think too much about it. Should you live well and fully play out the yin and yang divine vein to its full potential, you might be able to transcend me and senior sister. At that time, I might think of making you my man." Su Meiyao coquettishly winked at Xianxia and said with a pretty smile. This made Xianxia's might suddenly fall into utter chaos. Cough, cough. "I already have Xianxia," Xianxia replied. "So what? If I'm willing to be your woman, do you think I would care about that?" Su Meiyao mischievously smiled before touching Xianxia's face. At this time, Xianxia acted like a shy girl as he blushed before turning away. His heart was pounding. The herbs had already been systematically arranged. Xianxia began refining the building foundation dan. He intended to try refining a few times before asking Su Meiyao about the difficulties he encounters. He originally only had 15 sets or herbs, but after cutting them it had become a total of 60. He believed that he would absolutely not fail more than 50 times. Using the brilliant flame dragon furnace to refine the building foundation dan, he actually only needed an hour, but that was only for the cut-off herbs. Besides, he also failed in the middle of refining. The first time refining the building foundation dan, Xianxia failed. However, he found out it was indeed true that the difficulty in refining the building foundation dan was similar to that of a high-grade spirit level dan, and 10 times harder than the refinement of the true elemental dan and the white jade dan. Though he failed completely while refining high-grade spirit level dan, but he had accumulated experience from them. And regarding control, he had gained a lot of experience, or else he would not be able to refine using the brilliant flame dragon furnace for more than an hour, and that was equivalent to half of the refining process. If it was someone else, in the absence of the herbs for refining a high-grade spirit level dan, they absolutely would not try to refine a building foundation dan. Even if they wanted to refine a building foundation dan, they would first refine a low-grade profound level dan. If those alchemists came to know that Xianxia was using so many herbs for the building foundation dan unprofitably, they would definitely scold Xianxia to death. For these material, it could be said that Xianxia simply had no shortage of them. Just give him some time, and he would have as much as he needed. As long as a seed was left with him, using the dragon saliva exercise, he would be able to grow a large amount of it. Just take the azure profound fruit for example. He had not even taken a full month to grow 20 of them. In addition to learning how to refine the building foundation dan, Xianxia also created dragon saliva, because he feared that his current materials were not enough for refining a building foundation dan. Bit by bit time passed, and in the blink of an eye 20 days passed while refining the building foundation dan. Xianxia had already failed more than 50 times, and he was now only left with 8 set of herbs. The building foundation Dan is a little bit harder than the white jade Dan and the true elemental Dan, and I feel I've almost succeeded. At this time Xianxia was somewhat excited. After experiencing several failures, he had managed to grasp a bit of something, and it was exactly that subtle feeling. Su Meiyao had already passed down her experience to Xianxia, allowing Xianxia to pay some attention regarding some important points which could allow Xianxia to take less detours. In this case, Xianxia was step by step getting closer to successfully refining the Dan. Now he was finally at the most crucial step of solidifying the Dan. He was confident, and if he was successfully able to refine the building foundation Dan, it would be much more handy when he once again went to refine the true elemental Dan and the white jade Dan. The brilliant flame dragon furnace was radiating a blood-red light, and from time to time a hot chi would surge out from it. Both of Xianxia's hands were placed on the two places on the brilliant flame dragon furnace dedicated for hands, which allowed the alchemist to pour the flames, true chi and divine sense in. At this time in Xianxia's mind there was a sea of fire, where multitudes of spirit herbs were being baked by the flame at varying temperatures. He was slowly transforming them into powder, overflowing with colorful spirit chi, while the spirit chi drifted at the top, which were tyrannical as well as true bid. Xianxia used his divine sense to squeeze them together for fusion and purification. At the same time he also started integrating those herbs transformed into powder in the sea of fire, and he could not allow any of them to be even a little bit burned, or else it would fall short. This was the test of an alchemist's divine sense. The flames were burning in the brilliant flame dragon furnace for 10 days and 10 nights, but outside it was just past half an hour. Even so, those herbs had not even completely fused. As the time went by, Xianxia was already drenched in his sweat. But his true chi was very vigorous, so he was not worried about his true chi consumption. But currently the consumption of his divine sense was very formidable, and this was because his divine sense had to take into account many powders, while at the same time he also had to appease various violent herbal spirit chis as he fused them together. Xianxia, using his divine sense, had already squeezed all of the various powders transformed from the herbs, and those colorful tyrannical herbal spirit chis had already calmed down and gradually started fusing. Now it was the most crucial step, which was to, in one breath, make the herbal spirit chi and the herbal powder fuse, and then solidify the Dan. In this process there was no room for a single mistake, and if the spirit chi was not enough or made even a little bit of herbal powder disperse, then everything would be for nothing. Xianxia had failed many times at this process. Herbal spirit chi and herbal powder fusion. Xianxia, using his divine sense, slowly cemented a Dan from the herbal powder. Xianxia at this time dropped a drop of dragon saliva and began to enter the final phase of solidifying the Dan. Before he had failed dozens of times at this final moment and the furnace had exploded. The brilliant flame dragon furnace was slightly trembling, and sweat was dripping from Xianxia's face like rain while his eyebrows were tightly knit together. His complexion was also somewhat pale. At this time he could clearly see that the building foundation Dan, which was about to solidify in the brilliant flame dragon furnace, had fiercely started shaking, and it looked like it would explode at any time. Su Meiyao's beautiful hands were holding a silk towel tightly, anxiously watching Xianxia. And Bai Yuyu's ice-cold and bright pretty eyes were also open wide, with a look of encouragement in her eyes looking at Xianxia. Would I fail once again? This has already happened to me more than 10 times. This is my bottleneck? The bottleneck of my spirit. My divine sense is not enough, so I need to break through. Xianxia thought, and at this time all his divine sense was almost dried up, but he still needed to continue. Usually, divine sense still occupied a pivotal position, such as some martial arts required very high divine sense. Divine sense was also required to gather true chi outside the body, otherwise true chi would scatter. But in such cases there was enough divine sense. However, when forging weapon and refining dawn, such as alchemists refining some relatively high-level Dan, or refiners engraving lots of spirit veins on spirit weapon, when the divine sense was not enough, that would lead to failure. If martial artists completely depleted their divine sense, it would be the same as an energetic man without any spirit, unable to play out any strength of his body. Or they would even fall in a state of drowsiness. Xianxia had now consumed his divine sense to his limit, but also didn't know by virtue of what he was able to sustain. He felt he was about to fall down, so Xianxia operated his Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise, and controlled the vigorous true Qi in his body, making the true Qi madly impact the meridians, so that his whole body was covered in endless pain, so that he could stay awake. At the same time, he exercised his power to fuse his true Qi and spirit to quickly condense out divine sense. Xianxia tortured his own body till blood was overflowing, mixing with sweat on his body, exuding a strange stench. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu both knew Xianxia's reason for doing so. Do not force yourself. Give up. Su Meiyao faintly sighed, and gently said. She could not bear to see as Xianxia continued his self-mutilation. Give up? Xianxia knew if this time he was not successful, not only would he fail refining the building foundation Dan, but also he would be unable to break through his own bottleneck. When he remembered Elder Dan using her superior might against him, he had no power to resist, and he remembered Liao Xiaoyun humiliating him, trampling his dignity. He told himself, in any case, if he wanted to become stronger, he had to endure. He needed to refine out the building foundation Dan, and this was the only way possible for him advance to the true martial realm in a short time. Not only was Xianxia currently sweating, but he was still bleeding, and in order to keep himself awake, he continued the self-mutilation of his own body. Xianxia gradually lost consciousness, but his subconscious continued to condense out divine sense, constantly pressing on that restless building foundation Dan in the brilliant flame dragon furnace. Unconsciously, Xianxia suddenly felt losing the sense of his own body, and no matter how he tortured himself, he was unable to feel any pain. Xianxia suddenly awakened. However, he found himself in a space full of white light, and this was shocking for him. He also saw an infant inside this space, very small, like a newborn baby, and this infant had his eyes closed, looking very cute. Suddenly, that baby opened his eyes, and Xianxia was fiercely startled, because what this baby could see, he was also seeing. The baby smiled to him, and Xianxia also left the bizarre space, again returning to the state of alchemy. He surprisingly found out that his divine sense was actually very abundant, and many times more powerful than before. It was as if he had not consumed any of his divine sense before. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu also felt something strange, and they originally thought Xianxia was giving up, but saw Xianxia's raised mouth, exposing a trace of confident smile. Just a moment passed by and Xianxia opened his eyes, raised his head and insanely laughed. Ha ha! I have refined building foundation Dan. Xianxia had not opened the brilliant flame dragon furnace, but he was convinced that there was a building foundation Dan inside it. In the midst of his laughter, both his eyes shed tears as only he was aware on how much torture he had gone through to achieve this result. 19 years old, and he had not yet refined a high-grade spirit level Dan, but he had directly refined a building foundation Dan. Even Su Meiyao was very, very shocked. Originally she had wanted Xianxia to completely refine all the herbs he possessed before once again refining after the new herbs had grown out. In this way he would eventually be successful. She had expected him to require at least 3 or 5 years, as she had refined a profound level Dan in a similar fashion. After Xianxia laughed for a while he fell down, asleep. He was extremely tired. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu went over and opened the brilliant flame dragon furnace. They saw a crystal Dan with numerous golden and azure lines. This was the building foundation Dan, and a high-grade quality one at that. In fact, most of the Dan Xianxia refined had been high-grade quality, which was extremely hard to achieve. The divine sense of this brat has actually reverted to its pinnacle state. No, it's even stronger than before. Bai Yuyu pressed her cold, beautiful hands on Xianxia's forehead before shouting with surprise. It was also the first time Bai Yuyu had ever touched Xianxia. However, only Xianxia's body needed to recuperate and rest. His mind was clearly aware. He could clearly feel Bai Yuyu's cold, beautiful hands. It gave him a wonderful feeling and even put him in an absent-minded state. Junior sister, aren't you going to help him clean his body? I remember that you often use some dubious methods to reward him. Bai Yuyu said, revealing a smile with a hint of elegance on her face. Su Meiyao lightly snorted before softly laughing. Senior sister, this brat seems to like you more. Although he and me are more intimate, I feel as if he cares more about you. As such, when you're gentle towards him, this brat is happy to death. I guess he is rather desperate in order to win your favor. Bai Yuyu's complexion turned cold. Yet that ice-cold white face of hers was slightly tinted red. She coldly replied, "Don't talk nonsense. You do not know how he looks at your body? He could not wait to strip off your clothes and push you down. Obviously he prefers you, right? Besides, last time you kissed him, it turned him into a pig." Su Meiyao just lightly laughed in response before directly stripping off Xianxiang's clothes. Suddenly, Xianxiang was left with nothing on his body. Yet while looking directly at him, Su Meiyao didn't even have a tint of red of her face. This brat is truly ruthless towards himself. However, his body looks much better compared to when we see it from inside the ring. Su Meiyao said with a mischievous smile while rinsing off the stains on Xianxiang's body. "Senior sister, come help me. We have already seen this brat's body. Do you not want to do something for him now?" Su Meiyao said with a soft laugh. Currently Xianxiang could not move his body after it had been badly tortured. But after hearing the conversations of the two girls, all sorts of complex and strange emotions surged in his heart. Bai Yuyu went over and coldly snorted. "I do not know how many times I've seen his body, yet I am unable to dispel my anger." Although she said so, she still came up with a towel and carefully wiped Xianxiang's stained body. Xianxiang secretly despised both of these female rogues. They stayed inside the ring and had actually repeatedly peeped on him from inside it. Of course, he was also somewhat happy. After all, both beauties had seen his body many times. He suddenly felt somewhat cheap. Meanwhile, they were complacent looking at him. "Senior sister, I worry that one day you will not need me," Su Meiyao said. Her pretty face was filled with a worried expression as she and Bai Yuyu were cleaning Xianxiang's robust body. Bai Yuyu was silent for a while, before sighing. "When my great hatred has been resolved, I will disperse my ruthless devil skill. At that time, you have to protect me." Su Meiyao revealed a smile. "Don't worry. At that time this brat will definitely protect you." While speaking, she patted Xianxiang's chest. Bai Yuyu no longer spoke. She knew that Xianxiang would certainly be very strong in future, and it would be no problem for him to protect her. But at the same time, she was worried that when she had no strength, no one would care about her. Su Meiyao said, "Senior sister, Master only cultivated the ruthless devil skill. Because of us and it lead to his own demise. I do not want you to turn out like that. I know, you do not need to worry about me. I have a sense of moderation." Bai Yuyu's complexion became somewhat complicated. Xianxiang had not expected these pair of sisters to have this kind of story, but he always felt that Su Meiyao had hid some things from Bai Yuyu. Xianxiang recovered very quickly. Just as Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu were helping him clean his body, he suddenly sat up. "Thanks for both sisters' concerns." Xianxiang smiled, before taking out his clothes and putting it on. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu had touched Xianxiang's body over and over. They had not intended to tell this to Xianxiang, but he had suddenly woken up. This made them somewhat angry and ashamed. Both of their enchanting and cold faces were fully blushing. Both of the beauties were grinding their teeth while staring at Xianxiang. "You were awake?" Bai Yuyu coldly asked. Previously, they had been conversing and done nothing, but it was seldomly this shameful for her. Xianxiang giggled and said, "Nope. I just woke up. I had not thought both sisters would be so considerate and personally help me take a bath. Tell me honestly, have you or have you not heard what junior sister and I were talking about before?" Bai Yuyu's voice and complexion instantly went below absolute zero as invisible slaughter chi spread open, making Xianxiang tremble. "Yes, but I did not do so intentionally. I had already lost sense of my body, but my divine sense still remained," Xianxiang truthfully replied. Seeing Bai Yuyu's complexion becoming more ugly, he quickly said, "Sister Yuyu, I will never speak about you peeping on me, and I'll definitely be there to protect you. I know what the ruthless devil skill can do to people. I'm also worried about you." "Forget it." Bai Yuyu closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Thinking of the shameful things she said before, Her face could not help but become a little hot. Bai Yuyu had soon tried to forget, but Su Meiyao had not. She snorted to hide her shyness, and came beside Chun Xiang and pinched his arm. But she did not use much of her strength because it was Chun Xiang. Wasting my good intentions for you. To think you even intentionally pretended to be asleep just to tease me and senior sister. Su Meiyao angrily said. It was the first time Chun Xiang had seen her so angry, but strangely it was captivating and made her look even more enchanting. Chun Xiang secretly praised it in his heart. Sister Meiyao, you look really nice even when you're angry. Chun Xiang didn't know what was wrong with him, but he could not help but blurt out the truth. This made Su Meiyao angrily stomp in response. Chun Xiang scratched his head, grinned and asked, Two sisters, where does my body look good? And how many times have you looked? Bai Yuyu did not answer and just sat there with her eyes closed, pretending to have not heard the question. Su Meiyao was also speechless. Could it be they were going to be forced to say they were bored and that was why they would secretly look at him? Later on, you're not allowed to mention this, Bai Yuyu coldly ordered. Although she actually didn't care much about it, she still acted domineering, in order to avoid Chun Xiang's continued probing of this topic. Su Meiyao snorted and changed the subject. Tell me about the process during your alchemy. Why did your divine sense suddenly revert back to its pinnacle state? Speaking of this, Chun Xiang was also puzzled and he quickly described what had occurred during that time. You really saw a baby? Bai Yuyu hurriedly asked as she came beside Chun Xiang. Chun Xiang nodded his head and Su Meiyao also came over with a look of shock as she glanced at Bai Yuyu. Relax, do not move. I am going to take a look at your consciousness. Bai Yuyu extended both of her hands and placed them above Chun Xiang's cheeks. Chun Xiang's face was being stroked by a pair of cold and soft hands and made him secretly shout, Cool, Sister Yuyu. It feels comfortable when you touch my face. Don't talk nonsense. Bai Yuyu coldly replied in a low voice. Both of the beauties were leaning against Chun Xiang as he was blandly breathing in their body fragrance. He was enjoying Bai Yuyu's beautiful hands as they transmitted a cool feeling, and he wished that this feeling could last just a little bit longer. After a short moment, Bai Yuyu sucked in a mouthful of air and retracted her hands. Nodding towards Su Meiyao, It's true. I saw that baby. Su Meiyao was surprised as a slight smile appeared on her face. Then she too pressed her hands on the sides of Chun Xiang's cheeks and closed her eyes. Chun Xiang was looking closely at that enchanting and mesmerizing face of Su Meiyao. He could not help but gradually move his sight downwards before the view made him absent-minded. Two snow-white lumps were squeezed, causing deep ravines. It was so beautiful that he could not help but want to lightly bite on them. In the end, just what is that, baby? Chun Xiang asked uncertainly. Su Meiyao squeezed his face before happily laughing. That is the appearance of you when you were but a child, and at the same time it is also your divine sense state and is somewhat similar to your soul. However, it is called a spirit and is basically the combined form of your divine sense and soul. Is it very formidable? Chun Xiang, seeing Su Meiyao laughing with happiness, knew that this was definitely not a common thing. Very formidable. You have entered the first stage of Shinto. Bai Yuyu nodded her head towards him. I hope that what you just promised me was not just empty talk. Shinto? Chun Xian was confused, but he saw that Bai Yuyu had a bizarre warm expression in her eyes when she looked at him, and he knew that he had gained Bai Yuyu's recognition. This made him very excited. Just as Su Meiyu had said before, he indeed slightly preferred Bai Yuyu. He didn't know why, but he always got the feeling that Bai Yuyu, this ice-cold beauty, made others feel very much affection and love towards her. Shinto is using the spirit to enter the Tao. It is a way of cultivation for your divine sense. It is different from martial arts, as martial arts is mainly used to release the power of your body. Meanwhile, Shinto is releasing the power of your spirit. If you cultivate it to a certain point, your spirit would even be able to leave your body and wander in each world, one by one. It would be invisible and stateless, yet it possesses Armageddon might. This is the lifetime goal and strived for by many strong martial artists. Bai Yuyu said with a look of yearning along with a sliver of helplessness in her eyes. This was because she cultivated using the ruthless devil skill. and if it was not dispersed later she would become someone without the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Although at that time she would also be extremely powerful. Imagine you were sitting alone at home while your spirit drifts between heaven and earth, flies into the sky and enters into the ground. Omnipotent yet not any weaker than the strength of your body. Can you imagine how formidable that is? As long as you need to, you would be able to shape your own body using the world's spirit qi. Su Meiyao was very excited and her beautiful face was brimming with a tender and beautiful smile. She too had much longing for that state. Undead and indestructible. Xianxia was mind-boggled and could not help but mutter. Correct. In order to enter Shinto you would need to have a very rare and favorable condition which you have just achieved. That baby is the newborn state of your spirit. After it reaches adulthood, that baby will have the exact same appearance as you. Bai Yu said. In the future you simply need to cultivate your divine sense. As for specifically how to do so, neither me nor senior sister are clear about it. I also believe that not many people would know how to either because very few people have cultivated this state. Su Meiyao was somewhat regretful. Xianxia's mood was very good at this time. Not only was he able to refine the building foundation Dan, but his divine sense had also advanced by leaps and bounds. In addition to all of this he had also entered Shinto. Of course, what made him happy the most was the fact that Bai Yu, this ice-cold beauty, now had a much better attitude towards him. This is all due to the encouragement from both you sisters. Although at that time you told me to give up, I know in your heart that you very much wanted me to be successful. I also did not want to disappoint you too, so I was able to break through the limit of my divine sense. Xianxia smiled. It didn't hurt nor tickle to flatter the two beauties. Continue your alchemy and quickly enter the true martial realm, Bai Yu said and then stepped aside. Su Meiyao came to Bai Yu's side and leaned against her body and embraced her waist. Su Meiyao's face had a very worried look. Xianxia was now left with 7 sets of herbs. He had also recovered, so he seized the time to do alchemy, and he did not to waste another minute. 3 days passed, and since then Xianxia had successfully refined for building foundation dawn. Although he had failed 3 times, he was already very satisfied. Xianxia could not help but sigh while looking at the 5 building foundation dawn. He had heard that a dan costs a good few 10,000 crystal stones, but there was no standard price tag. Ordinarily, the only way to get one was through an auction or by personally requesting one from an alchemist. After Xianxia swallowed a dan, he began to cultivate. All the true qi was compressed in the true element grains inside the beasts in his dantian. Xianxia hadn't noticed that he had been missing for more than 8 months now. This was more than enough time for him to elude his pursuers and return to the extreme martial sect, yet they had received no information of him. Many people speculated that Xianxia was so seriously injured after the escape that he was unable to heal his wounds and died in the wilderness, his corpse eaten by the demon beasts. Xianxia had been hiding in the mountainside and cultivating. He had already finished eating the 5 building foundation dawn. The true qi in the building foundation dan was beyond what he had speculated and turned up to be so much more that it led to there being a large period of time needed to fully refine it. It was night time. After a heavy snowfall, the entire mountain forest was snow white. A silver moon lay hanging in the night sky, illuminating the white snow. Cold wind whistled through the forest as a man wearing a black sturdy outfit appeared. He casted a high-level qigong and treaded on the tree leaves, skimming past the top of the forest. His speed was extremely fast. Furthermore, his steps left no trace on top of the pure, unblemished white snow. At this time Xianxia was enjoying the rush and was releasing all the excitement in his heart. He had been depressed after staying in the mountainside for so long. Now he had finally broken through to the true martial realm and became the youngest martial artist to ever do so. He flew all the way while roaring at the same time. His roar echoed in the silent mountain forest and shook the leaves of the trees. Inside the 5 divine beasts within Xianxia's dantian, 7 of the true element grains had become extremely bright, while 3 element grains from the azure dragon beast form were now brightly lit. This was all due to the large amount of true qi from the building foundation dawn. When he was congealing, it allowed all 5 of the divine beasts to congeal 10 bright true element grains. He could be considered in the second level of the true martial realm, however he was actually only in the first level. His strength remained beyond that of those in the same level, even among true martial realm martial artists. Xianxia quickly left and headed towards Fragrance City. He wanted to buy a lot of materials for the White Jade Dan and the True Elemental Dan. After he learned how to successfully refine them, he would go and obtain the level 4 Alchemist certificate before returning to the extreme martial sect. Along the way, Xianxia occasionally threw a True Qi Dan in the air before catching it with his mouth. In his eyes, True Qi Dan could only serve as snacks. The true martial realm's strength is truly not in the same realm. I feel like I could casually demolish an entire mountain, Xianxia said with excitement. He opened his mouth to catch a recently thrown True Qi Dan in the air. Suddenly a white silhouette flashed before him in the air. That thing robbed the True Qi Dan. Bastard! You actually dared to steal what belongs to me. Currently Xianxia had no place to test his strength. He was still in a good mood, but now that someone or something had bothered him, it would be the perfect practice target for him. Xianxia released his divine sense and soon noticed that thing was quickly fleeing straight ahead. He quickly released the vermilion bird fire wing and soon caught up. He did so because he could not catch up with that thing just by relying on his feet. What the hell is that thing? It's actually so fast. Xianxia could not help but shout in surprise. He was now in the true martial realm, yet that thing still ran faster than him. If he didn't have these wings, it would be extremely difficult for him to catch up. Soon Xianxia saw down below in the forest a small white squirrel leaping across the trees with an incredibly fast speed. The culprit turned out to be an extremely fast demon beast. It's not an ordinary demon beast. Be a little careful. Its speed is very terrifying, Su Meiyao exhorted. Xianxia quickly dived down and released his dragon aura because most demon beasts would cower in terror at a dragon's might. After that white squirrel sensed the pressure of a dragon, it could not help but be distracted for a moment and hit the trunk of a tree, creating a very comical scene. Just as Xianxia was preparing to smack a deadly palm towards that squirrel, a burst of white light soared from that squirrel to his surprise. But that white light soon disappeared, revealing a white-robed little girl who had a fair face and delicate skin, sitting cleanly onto the snow. She was using her cute little hands to hold her head, flat mouth, and tears on the edge of her eyes. She looked like she was about to cry and looked very adorable. Seeing a squirrel suddenly turn into a 7- or 8-year-old lovely little girl, Xianxia could not help but be taken aback. Although he heard that demon beasts could change forms, only very strong ones could do so. But this furtive squirrel, apart from having extremely high speed, did not look strong at all. Why did you steal my True Qi Dan? Xianxia asked with a cold face. Although she was hateful, she was still a lovely little girl. However, Xianxia didn't have a nice expression on his face as he glared at her. I was hungry. You confused me and knocked my head. It hurts. I hate you. That little girl looked up and 2 drops of tears had already dropped down from her watery eyes. Biting her lips, she glared at Xianxia. Xianxia suddenly caught a glimpse of 2 small things on the little girl's head. It looked very similar to small antlers. Antlers? No, was it not a dragon's horn? Xianxia quickly associated the two because he recalled that 8 months ago, a dragonling had been born. Was this little girl a transformation of that dragonling? Dragon. This little girl is actually a dragon. Anyway, no matter what means, we must keep this dragon. Su Meiyao's voice became very excited and quickly exclaimed. She is strong. Although she is a dragonling, she is by no means weak. Bai Yu warned. Suddenly, Xianxia's mind became blank. He had totally not expected to encounter this dragonling. After the shock passed, he quickly calmed down. He then leaned over, took a few grains of True Qi Dan and held it towards the girl. His face had a look of shame, and with a gentle smile he said, Little sister, I'm sorry. If you had told me you were hungry, I would not have chased you. I thought you were a thief. That little girl sniffed the 5 True Qi Dan in Xianxia's hands. Her tears didn't fall again as her big eyes rotated a bit. Like lightning, her hands reached over and snatched away the True Qi Dan from Xianxia's palm. Seeing such a speed made Xianxia suck his own tongue. Can you forgive me now? Xianxia sat back and watched the little girl's delicate and cute little face. After that little girl devoured those 5 true qi dawn with relish, she revealed a sweet smile. After you give me 10 more of those things, I'll forgive you. Xianxia had not expected this little girl to actually be so smart at such a young age. It was as if this dragonling had not just been born recently. Is it that, after a dragon was born, their wisdom would develop very quickly? Xianxia had a lot of true qi dawn. He took out 20 of them and handed them all over. The little girl soon ate them all. At this time, the little girl had an irresistible expression in her eyes as she waited for Xianxia. A neat and pitiful appearance. It was so potent that it made Su Meiyao anxious, and she almost ran out to hug that little girl. Xianxia was now akin to taking out candy to beguile a child. He once again took out 10 true qi dawn before asking, "Little sister, how can you transform?" "My name is Sister Long. Do not call me little sister." The little girl interrupted him. "Oh, Sister Long, why can you transform into a little squirrel?" Xianxia asked. The little girl suddenly giggled. "Just a moment ago, you called me Sister Long. This brother is really stupid. Looking at you being so stupid, I will tell you. I'm a dragon. Whatever beast I see, I can transform into them. Formidable, right?" Xiang's mouth slightly twitched. He had actually been cheated. He originally thought this little girl was smart, but had completely not expected her to be so high profile to the point where she revealed that she was a dragon. Moron. You're not thinking why I dared to say I am a dragon, are you? The little girl mischievously laughed. Xiang was once again taken back by surprise. Just a moment he had indeed thought of this. Fool. I'm very clever. I also know that you can tell that I'm a dragon. The little girl grabbed a handful of snow and squeezed it into a snowball. With a mischievous laugh, she threw it straight towards Xiang. Just before Xiang was about to react, that snowball smashed right on his face. It made the little girl even more happy. My name is Long Shui. I am a newly born white dragon. Long Shui mischievously laughed and said, Previously I heard someone tell you that I'm a dragon, and you should do anything to keep me. Am I right? Xiang was shocked. Bai Yuyu and Su Meiyao were shocked as well. That dragonling girl could actually hear their voices despite them being inside the ring. Long Shui looked at Xiang's hand. Although there was an invisible ring, it seemed as if this dragonling could actually see it. Xiang suddenly had a feeling that he was being completely seen through by this little girl. Good. Very formidable. Yin and Yang divine vein, Shinto infant soul, and your cultivated martial art is also our dragon family's most powerful dragon-slaying divine martial art. The Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. You also seem to be in possession of the Azure Dragon slaughtering devil blade that was refined with the help of our dragon family's Azure Dragon. Long Shui's small face was filled with shock. She had not expected in this world that a single human had actually collected all these heaven-defying things. Xiang gulped. He was ever more surprised than the little girl inside his heart. This feeling was a little bit uncomfortable because he had just been totally seen through by this young girl. You should be Xiang, who was being searched by those group of people from before. In the forest I had heard many people mentioning your name. I know that you're a very powerful guy. Long Shui licked her lips and once more used a hungry expression as she looked at Xiang. Xiang gulped. In his heart he was even more surprised. This feeling was a little bit uncomfortable, because he had been totally seen through by this girl. Xiang was shocked. After a sigh, he took out a box of true Qi Dan. Little girl, although I am not a good person, you will absolutely not find a single good soul who can give you this kind of thing to eat every day. Xiang smiled. He calmed himself down and could see this little girl also had ideas to be together with him. Indeed, if I expose my identity as a dragon, it would become very troublesome for me. You have so many good things, but you should not have any ideas to fight with me. Nom nom nom. Long Shui nodded her head while she ate those true Qi Dan like she was eating rice. It was clear that she had been hungry for a very long time. I can give you these things to eat, but I also have much better things, provided that you give me some help. Although you look like a little girl, you are by no means stupid, Xiang said. Long Shui stuffed those true Qi dawn inside her mouth. While chewing, she also spoke at the same time, looking very cute. This made Chun Xiang unable to help himself as he touched her cheeks. Although I don't know how you cultivated out Shinto infant soul. I know that you definitely don't know a way to cultivate it, however I do. You should know that we dragons from the very start do not cultivate our bodies, but instead practice Shinto until we are able to congeal out our bodies. Only then will we break our eggshells.